Hello, class. Good afternoon. Today we're going to be studying some geometric sequences. All right, we're going to put this on page 38. So make sure you get this written in that table of contents, and then you can go ahead and flip on over to page 38. On page 38 here, we got some information written down for you already. So what we need you to do first is pause and copy. Pause and copy. That way when we can save time on the video and you have more time to do your work. Okay, pause and copy, and here we go.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about geometric sequences. So now that you have copied this down to this bottom part at number 5, what we are going to do is geometric sequence. This is just a sequence in which the ratio between the two terms is constant. And when you're talking about geometric, you're talking about multiplying or dividing, as to where arithmetic was adding or subtracting. Okay, instead of a common difference, we're going to have what we call a common ratio. The reason it's ratio is because we're multiplying or dividing. So a common ratio is just the numerical ratio, which is R, between any two terms. So if you've copied and written this down here, this is going to be styled exactly like your worksheet. So like the first 6 problems, are they geometric? If yes, tell me what the ratio is, and then tell me the next 3 terms. So they kind of put it all together where arithmetic did not. So the way you're going to do this, for example 1, I have 6, 12, 24, and 48. Since we're talking about geometric, you want to look, are the numbers getting bigger or smaller? Since the numbers are getting bigger, this means we're multiplying. But some people can't figure out what you're multiplying that easily in your head. So to figure out what you're multiplying by, if the numbers get bigger, take the second term and divide by the first term. So 12 divided by 6, and that gives me 2. So that tells me I'm multiplying by 2. So now I just need to check and make sure that I'm multiplying by 2 every time. Well, 12 times 2 is 24, so that works. 24 times 2 is 48, so that works. So we're going to say, yes, this is geometric. The ratio is 2. And so now to find the next 3 terms, if you need your calculator, grab it. We're going to do 48 times 2. That gives me 96. Then we're going to do 96 times 2, which gives me 192. And then we're going to do 192 times 2, which gives me 384. So those are the next 3 terms in my sequence. Okay, when I look at example 2, I'm looking, I have 810, 270, 90, and 30. Okay, this time my numbers are getting smaller. Since my numbers are getting smaller, that means I'm dividing. Well, to figure out what you're dividing by, since they're getting smaller, you take the first number and divide by the second number. And I'll move that up so you can see it. 810 divided by 270. And when I do that, I am dividing by 3. Okay, so now I just need to check to make sure I'm dividing by 3 the whole time. So I'm going to take 270 and divide by 3, which gives me 90. I'm going to do 90 divided by 3, which gives me 30. So yes, I am dividing by 3 every single time. So yes, this is geometric. Now, this is where your ratio gets a little tricky. When we're doing the formula here in a minute, you're never actually going to divide. But since I am dividing, that is the exact same thing as multiplying by 1/3. So dividing by 3 and multiplying by 1/3 are the same thing. So if you are ever dividing on your ratio, you just have to turn it and make it a fraction. So my number's 3, I make it 1/3. So now to finish off my sequence, I'm going to do 30 divided by 3. And 30 divided by 3 gives me 10. I'm going to do 10 divided by 3. And that gives me 3.33333. So I'll give you an option here. You can either write 3.3 repeating, or if you hit math, enter, you can give me 10/3. Okay, now I'm going to take that. So I'm going to go back up to this problem. I'm going to get my 3.3 repeating, and I'm going to divide by 3 again. And that gives me 1.1 repeating. Or again, you can do math, enter. It did not work. So let me do. And that gives me 10/9. If you don't want to have to change it to a fraction, you don't have to. I'll take the repeating as long as you put the repeating mark. Okay, for the next one, I have -2, 10, -50, and 250. Now, the first thing I want you to notice, because this is a huge major difference, is that the signs interval. I have a negative, a positive, a negative, a positive. If they rotate every other number, you are going to be doing something by a negative. You're going to be multiplying by a negative. You're going to be dividing by a negative. That's not as big of a deal to worry about right now. Since your numbers, if you just look, 2, 10, 50, and 250, they're getting bigger as you go. So I'm going to take 10 and divide it by 2 to see what I'm multiplying by. And I am multiplying by 5. But since my sign's interval, negative, positive, I am multiplying by -5. So now I just need to check to make sure that this is true. -2 times -5 is 10. -10 times -5 is -50. -50 times -5 is 250. So yes, this is geometric. This time my ratio, I'm multiplying, so I just keep the number as -5. Now, just continue in with your calculator. I'm going to put it right here so y'all can see. And we're going to do 250 times -5, which gives me -1,250. I'm going to take that and times it by -5, which gives me 6,250. And I'm going to take that and multiply it by -5, which gives me -31,250. And you just finished off your sequence. Okay, for the next one, I go 4, 8, 20, 60. So my numbers are getting bigger. So I'm going to take the second number and divide it by the first number. You can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to take the second number and divide it by the first number, and that gives me 2. Since my numbers are getting bigger, I am multiplying by 2, and this time it's a positive 2 because all the signs are the same. So now I just need to check. If I do 8 times 2, I should get 16, but I have 20. So this is not a geometric sequence. Moving on to the next one, you have 4, -1, 1/4, -1/16. So now what you're going to look at, your sign's interval. So something's going to be a negative sign. Your numbers are getting smaller. If they're getting smaller, take the first number and divide it by the second number. And when I do that, I am dividing by 4. Now, the only thing you need to remember to add in, since my sign's interval, I'm dividing by a -4. So now I just need to check to make sure if I keep dividing by -4 that this works. So if I do -1 divided by -4 and I hit math, enter, that gives me 1/4, which is what I have. So let me try one more time. We're going to divide by -4. So I'm going to take that answer and divide by -4, which gives me -1/16, which is what comes next in my sequence. So therefore, yes, this is geometric. My ratio, since I am dividing, I'm going to keep the negative sign, but instead of putting 4, I'm going to put 1/4, because when we're dividing, we change it to a fraction. Now I just got to continue this on. When I have -1/16 and I divide by -4, that gives me 1/64. And then I'm going to divide that by -4, which gives me -1/256. And then I'm going to divide that by -4, which gives me 1/1024. And I have my sequence finished off. Okay, now that you have that, if you will go ahead and write this next section that I've done in purple for me. So go ahead and pause and write all that for me. Once you have it written, unpause. Okay, the rule changes when we're doing geometric sequence. The rule is now a sub n equals a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1 power. Okay, now recall from arithmetic sequences that a sub n just means any number I want to plug in when I want to plug a number in. A sub 1 means the very first term, and r stands for the ratio. Okay, don't forget this. We talked about this up above. If dividing, the ratio must be a fraction. We're not going to be able to put a division bar in here, so we do the fraction. Okay, my instructions are write a rule and then find a sub 6. Okay, so first thing, 130, 65, 32.5, and 16.25. My numbers are getting smaller, so I'm going to take the first number and divide it by the second number just to figure out how it's changing. My ratio is going to be something with a 2. Since my numbers are getting smaller, I am dividing by 2. Now I just need to check that and make sure that's true. So I'm going to take 65 and divide by 2, which gives me 32.5. I'm going to take 32.5 and divide by 2, which gives me 16.25. So therefore, my a sub 1, my first term, is 130, and my ratio, now remember, since we are dividing by 2 every single time, that means I must change my ratio to a fraction, so 1 over 2. Now I just take the two things that I found and I plug them into this formula up here. Remember, it says write a rule, then find this. So I'm going to keep a sub n equals, my a sub 1 is 130, put a times sign. My ratio is 1/2, and I keep n minus 1 in the power position. That is your rule. I don't need you to simplify. I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to put that in. That's your rule. Now, step 2, now that I have a sub 6, remember that a sub 6 just means what we're going to be plugging in for n. So n equals 6. So I'm going to do a sub 6 equals, and we're going to have 130 times 1/2 and to the power of 6 minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to clear this out, and I'm going to type this. 130 times alpha y equals enter, 1/2, and we're going to go to the power of 6 minus 1. I'm just going to type it the exact way you wrote it. We're going to hit enter, and it gave me an answer of 65 over 16, and that is my final answer. So all you have to do is plug it in, get your formula, plug it in, write your answer. Okay, for example 2, I have 2, 8, negative 8, 32, negative 128. So my first term is 2, and now I just need to find my ratio. But I'm going to go ahead and already write something because since my signs are intervaling, I know it's going to be a negative. Now I just have to figure out how it's changing from 2 to 8, from 8 to 32. So I'm going to take the second number, which is 8, and divide by 2. That's a 4. Okay. I know it's a negative 4 because I already distinguished my signs interval, so it's negative. And since my numbers are getting bigger, I am multiplying by negative 4. So you just have to check to make sure. Negative 8 times negative 4 is 32. 32 times negative 4 is negative 128. So your ratio is negative 4. Now I'm going to plug in my rule. I have a sub n equals, and I'm going to take a sub 1, which is 2, times my ratio is negative 4 to the n minus 1. That is my rule. That's the first thing they asked me to do is write a rule. So my second step is to do a sub 6. So I'm going to do 2 times negative 4 to the 6 minus 1. Now I can just grab my calculator, and I am going to do 2 times negative 4 to the 6 minus 1 and type it in exactly how I wrote it. When I do that, I get negative 2,048, and that is my final answer. Okay, be very careful when you start your worksheet because it's not going to be a sub 6. You've got to read your instructions and see what you want to find. The bottom 6 problems are going to be done like this. If you have any questions, please ask for help.